were able to successfully execute that project. And the common theme that I had found in all of the projects that I had worked so far is that government works at a very humongous scale. You know, as somebody said, from birth to death, there is not a single aspect where a particular department in a particular ministry is not dealing with it. So from cradle to grave, government is involved in every aspect of a citizen's life. Now, the corollary of it is when we have an institution working at such huge scale, no matter the capability of the institution, there will be cracks at a certain instances and certain areas where the administrative capability or the administrative focus would not be as much on certain areas as it is in other areas. So because of the scale at which government functions, there are bound to be certain cracks where certain segments of population, certain sectors that fall through the cracks that are generally neglected. Now let me remind you, it is not due to some malevolence or willful negligence from the government. It's just that the scale is huge, the burden and the expectations are so huge. There are bound to be certain cracks where the government does not focus as much as it should. So because of this, in every department that you see, there will be certain segments, certain areas that are generally neglected, routinely neglected. Now let me give you one example. We do have a women and child welfare department across in all the states and in the central government as well. So one of the issues while I was reviewing some last year, the women and child welfare department, I was focusing on our Anganwadi services and whether we are able to provide good quality meals and education in Anganwadis. And during the discussion, one of the points that had come up is that, there was a child who he needed some special medical intervention, for which though he was eligible for Aragyasri, but we could not because he did not have the Aragyasri card. So the immediate question, then I probed them further, like how many students are there where without Aragyasri cards, and then they gave me a certain number. To all these children, in a span of a month, we could distribute these, and towards the end, what I was very happy to see many orphans and orphans often abandoned at bus stops or your railway stations. So it was very gratifying, especially as an administrator, for us to give these identity certificates. Now the lesson that I learned there was that there are always certain segments, certain areas in every department which are not given as much focus as they should be. As I said, it is not due to willful negligence or just out of malevolence. It's just that they are not subject to as much focus as they should be. Now that's where corporates and CSR can come and fill that gap. The government capability is limited, the government's energies are limited, the employees' energies, attentions are limited. So my suggestion to all the corporates and Nirman as well is to find out those gaps in every department and try to intervene and complement the administration. That's where you are going to make the maximum impact. Now if you see the Bhadrachalam example as well, as administration, we had the fund and the money, and then we intervened to ensure basic life support, basic medical intervention, ensuring that ration is given for few days, ensuring that if they had some fevers or diseases, we could intervene and then treat them free of cost. And as an administrator, my immediate focus was to reduce as many deaths as possible, to ensure that there are no loss of life. That was my priority. But beyond that, there were also much more as much important things, like what if it's not just enough to save their lives. It's not just enough to give the medical supplies or ration for a few days. It was important that their livelihoods are back on track. Many of these communities that got flooded were from fishing communities whose traditional livelihood was based on fishing, or as you can see, there were sewing machines which got lost. So that's where I discussed with Mayur, and then I said, boss, see, I could do these many things from the administration point of view, but I would not have fund to bring them or give them sewing machines. I will not have funds to build them new homes. If you can get the corporate funding and then complement my efforts, so the immediate rescue and then the relief shall be my responsibility, but the rehabilitation shall be, with your support, that I can help guide you, so that the rehabilitation aspect, we needed you. And that's where they came in, they complemented. And not just this, even schools were submerged, many of the schools. So children had lost their school bags, in fact. 850 students had lost their school bags and all their textbooks and notebooks and their pens and all that little, essentials. It might be look trivial to us, but then it was, when I inquired that why these people were not coming back to school, the reason that came up to me was they lost all their school kits and there was no way that they could buy them back or get it back. So when I pitched that to Mayur again, they had intervened and then they distributed almost 850 back to school kits, and it helped those children get back to their classrooms, and they could get back to their education, and they could continue pursuing their education. So my lesson in all of this, and then what I would urge all the corporates, is critical sometimes may seem trivial, but not trivial for the people that you're going to impact. The numbers might be less, but for those numbers, it's going to make a huge difference from 0 to 100. So that's where I think the corporates have to complement the administration and support, so that it's much more impactful in terms of how we are going to put this social funding. The second aspect is, instead of spending the expenditure, if you have X amount, in my experience, it is much better you narrow down your focus, spend on a few schools, but spend comprehensively and transform the entire school or an institution like hospital, whatever it is that you're there. Make it like a force of change, as a bright spot, so that that culture, now in Hyderabad, you see there's a government school called Raj Bhavan. It is Raj Bhavan Government School. It's right in that area lane when we pass near Raj Bhavan building. Now, many of the requests that I get from a lot of MLAs and everything is to get an admission for their ward in this government school and no other government school. That's because if you go to the school, you actually feel that you are in a very good corporate school. The standard is as good as any other corporate school. So even from the public point of view and from the services point of view. So instead of 10 schools, try to do very good in one school. Instead of thousands and thousands of villages and mandals, try to, as you here said, 10 villages, then you scale up to 50, then 100. So that the bright spot that you're going to create will be a force multiplier, and other schools and other mandals and the nearby gram panchayats will see that change very clearly, and then that force of that they would take inspiration, and then they would inspire them to do better, rather than spending on 100 schools where the impact is much less. It's much better, in my experience, to focus our efforts into a few particular institutions. Bhadrachalam project, the entire credit has to be given to the Nirman team, because the way they have their entire team was there positioned at Bhadrachalam. So I had only given them basic, requirement that this is how we can make it a success, and they had taken it up, and then completely they stationed a team there for many days, and then they drove the project up to completion. So that a lot of hassles that would usually come were not brought to me, and then resolved at their own level. So credit to Nirman for bringing to completion and making it sustainable. So this kind of quality NGO partners, they are very rare.